Okay, today I'm reviewing this large luxury house in Ontario, Canada, and it's from the Other Stallone TikTok channel. And I was tagged in the comments by Anita G and Dewey Finster, who asked me to review this. I don't mind the external appearance. It's very classically modern, but they've got a large house and they've pulled different volumes in forward and back, up and down to break up the mass of the thing. If they did this as one large block, as is often the case in the UK with so-called luxury homes, this would just look like a monstrosity, but they've broken up different materials, different volumes. So far, so good. It's obviously a car-dominant society. That appears to be the garage, and it's right up front, so you know where your priorities are. And they're using this sort of rustic stone. I'm going to come back to this because I have an issue with it. And see these bulkheads that are coming out of these cantilevered areas. I use cantilevers in my design, but I really try and make them as thin as possible, just because it just tends to look a bit more elegant usually. And I like this. I've not seen this often, but yeah, you've got a moat here. You've got a classic castle moat. So you're crossing a body of water to get to your house. I don't mind that, quite like it. This is where the problems start though. Doors off to one side, and that you can get around that, but this stairs right in front of you and at 90 degrees. So you're walking in and you're just hitting the thing. I know you're not actually physically hitting the thing, but it blocks you from getting into the house. Now, we've spoken about this on other videos where putting your stairs right in the central hallway, right there, just inside the front door. I mean, who wants their guests to go upstairs to the bedroom? Nobody. You just don't need to be doing this. I prefer designs where the stairs is discreet and off to one side. You can have it as a feature, just not right inside the front door, please. I know I'm going to get people from North America saying, but everybody drives into their garage and enters their house that way. If that really was the case, why bother having a front door at all? Anyway, I digress. We have this formal entrance with the stairs. It's just, and then there's this, right? This way of constructing a stone wall is called a square and sneck. So you've got bigger square blocks like that and smaller ones like this that are a sneck. And it is the second cheapest way of building a stone wall. The cheapest way is called random rubble, where just farmyard walls between fields and that sort of thing would just be random stones, any old size, no consideration given, and they're just arranged. And you could build rudimentary structures out of it. At least where I live in Scotland and across the UK, a wall like that would be fairly cheap, and the intention would always have been to render over it. If you had this as your house, if you were building it this way, you would put lime plaster or render over this to cover over the stone. You wouldn't really be showing this off. The most expensive stone is ashlar, dressed ashlar, where you have every block is tooled by a stonemason. It's perfectly smooth and perfectly square, rectangular, perfect 90 degrees cuts, and is absolutely smooth. And you show that off because it's quite expensive. Now, I don't mind that they've used it, sparingly, but they haven't. They've really gone to town with that stuff, and you will see more of it. So in we go, and we have what they've called a mud room, or we would call these boot rooms in the UK. And if you have a bench, you can take off your boots or wellies or shoes or whatever, so you're not muddying up the house. I've done that in a couple of properties. And they've got a nice big deck outside, a shelter deck. I do like a shelter deck. It's a good idea. Even in Ontario, which probably has a colder climate than where I live in Scotland. And you get people saying, oh, you can't do that unless it's, Australia or it's somewhere really warm like Florida. Actually, it works in colder, wetter climates too, because you get to use the outdoors more frequently than you otherwise would. And here's the main event. Okay, we all know how I feel about open plan spaces that are just a giant box, because everybody can see everybody else all of the time. There's nowhere to hide. You can't hide from the dirty dishes in the sink, and this is what they've done. I quite like this material on the ceiling, and I quite like the fact they've broken up. They've got a void and a sort of split level. The bedrooms have a hallway / gallery on the upper floor, and we've got our kitchen island here. Does anyone know what that is? Let's just go back and have a quick look at this. I don't know what that is. If anyone knows, please let me know. Warm wooden flooring, quite like that. Again, the stairs, I mean, on its own, I don't mind the design of the stairs, but it's in the wrong place, in my opinion. It's far too prominent within the design. And we're showing off the fridge. Why are we showing off the fridge? I don't know why we're showing off the fridge, but this is, I suppose, more of a philosophical outlook. If you take a house and you're just ramming it full of technology and saying this is amazing, isn't it brilliant? It's not really. I mean, you could take a bog standard, unremarkable home and fill it with expensive kit like flash air conditioning systems or really high-end kitchens, and in this case a black fridge. It's a bit like buying a cheap unremarkable car and fitting a very high-end stereo in it. It's still a cheap unremarkable car. Technology does not necessarily make architecture. Some people think that's controversial and think that loading their buildings up with toys really elevates it in some way, and I'm not really a fan of that. The bones of the building, the basic layout of the building, should work without needing to resort to high-tech gadgets and gizmos. You're welcome to disagree. So here we go. We've got this huge open hallway, which looks more like a dance floor than anything else. And here's the big problem. One, there's just way too much of this square and sneck type stone. But secondly, and more importantly, I think they've caused a thermal bridge, or they could have caused a thermal bridge. And what that means is, if any structural element, not just a wall, could be a steel beam, could be a timber beam, whatever it is, or concrete floor slab, if it's part outside, part inside, and it's freezing cold outside, and it will be in Ontario, freezing cold from time to time, then that's just going to suck the heat out of your building. If that stone wall, and I think it is, that the wall is just continuously run, when you get closer to it, you begin to see that some of these blocks, like that black stone block there, appears to be on both sides of that glazing. What that means is that wall is just a continuous unbroken series of blocks. Freezing cold outside, it will be freezing cold on that surface in there too, and you're going to get condensation, and it's going to literally suck the heat out of the building. It's a big building to begin with. Heating it is not going to be cheap, but this is just going to make things way, way harder. And we can't do that under the UK building regs. We can't do it. We've got a second sink, a second sort of kitchen. Why have we got this? Wine rack. I don't understand this. Having a second kitchen, fine. Bigger luxury homes do that, but they're often in a separate room off to the side. There's another kitchen just behind us. Why is this here? I'm wondering if they're really planning to entertain very large crowds of people here. I don't understand why you would have such a large, tall space that's just unbroken and have two separate, one kitchen and one second kitchen. I don't know what's going on there. I quite like this feature, a light well with, some planting in there. I think people bringing more greenery into their buildings, not beyond just potted plants, actual permanent greenery inside a building is something people are doing more often. And I'm a fan of it. I think it works as long as you keep control of it and actually can do the necessary maintenance to stop the plants from dying and whatnot, keep them alive. But yeah, you can see what I mean. They've gone way OTT with this stone wall idea. I don't mind a little bit of it. It's, maybe where these people are, older properties were built using this, and it's a local material that people are a fan of. But just look, I think those stones are both inside and outside. If you wanted to do this in the UK, the way you would do it is you would build that surface and then this surface and have a gap between them, and you would ram that gap full with probably a timber batten and some insulation, run the glazing up to it so that the outer surface and inner surface, they appear to line up, but they're not actually physically touching each other. The stones don't actually touch. The outside stones are kept separate from the inner stones, and it's called a thermal break, so that you're not having the heat sucked out of your building. Again, here's more of this top light with this inner planting. I quite like that. That's quite nice. I can get on board with it. You might want to have considered putting some frosting on that glass so the neighbours can't peer in as you're sitting in your bathtub. And yeah, that open plan space, it's not working for me. And the stairs, nice though it is in the wrong place. It should be off to one side and discreet. And their windows are quite high up on the wall. I wonder if there's a classic dilemma in any building, not just a house, any building. Are you designing this thing from the outside in or from the inside out? And if you're designing from the outside in, like the Georgians did this, and they just had a rigorous, symmetrical, hierarchical order, and the building's appearance looked a certain way from the outside. Quite often they would draw the elevation, the facade of the building first, and then they'd make the interior floor plan work, and your windows just had to be where they are, and that's it. You didn't get to say, move it 2 feet to the left. That just didn't happen. But if you design from the inside out, the windows just are wherever they happen to be, and the external appearance follows that. You draw the floor plan first, put the windows where they're most comfortable, and then it just looks the way it looks. I think this has been designed from the outside in rather than the inside out. So it has a certain appearance. When you're standing looking outside, it looks well proportioned. The downside of that is that you have then windows appearing in unusual or perhaps awkward places from the internal appearance of the building, from how you actually use the rooms. So yeah, sheltered deck, quite like it. I do this in my projects here in the UK. So yeah, on balance, I am not a fan of this. I thank you to the people who tagged me in it, but I think there are some significant issues with how this thing is laid out. And I don't know for a fact if they've thermally bridged those walls, but it does look like they have. Either way, I digress. I think the basic layout, the way that the stairs is arranged, the open plan space, it's not working, and they've gone way too much of this stone inside the building. That's my view on this house. Let me know if you agree in the comments.